time to get back on LinkedIn.
Coming up.
You testified before Parliament on October the 31st of last year. I did at the time ask you, what would you say you do here? Are any of your former colleagues at D&D double dipping?
I'm not sure what I don't know if I know what that means, but I am not aware of any double dipping going on.
It's what you do. Did you read the Auditor General's report?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All of it.
So
I've got lots of comments.
well, that's great. So by read into, you mean you read it?
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
So you read it and determined that the Auditor General, who is by definition a general with an army of auditors, that should be easy for you to understand based on your experience, that the whole army of auditors was wrong and this one-man army was right. Even just today, you said that you're a member of the Conservative Party, and that's not true. You haven't been a member of the Conservative Party since 2021, and so that's okay. That's okay. That's fine.
Okay. Order.
That's fine.
Order.
That's
order.
fine.
Order.
We know how
just
to.
1 second.
We know how to.
Just 1 second. I'm going to stop the clock. That is a prop and it's not allowed. Second, that is a donor card and it's not a membership card.
How long have you been a member of the Conservative Party?
Good old General hand grenade.
Oh, and you did show a card at some point. Can you just show that up for the hold that up to the camera,
no,
or
that
perhaps
is a prop.
table it to
Miss Shanahan. Hold on,
as
Miss
a
Shanahan.
document?
That is a prop, as the clerk is reminding me,
Okay.
and not permitted. So.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Without further ado, I'll turn things over to you.
This land that we gather on today is the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and is now home to many other First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. I'm a descendant of treaty signing Chief Robert Franklin, who is my great-grandfather, and has past Chief of Alderville First Nation. He was also a World War I veteran.
On what date did you start your employment with the Government of Canada?
Mr. Chair, the Government of Canada start date was the 19th of September, 2023.
Okay, I'll circle back to that. On what date were you first employed in any capacity with the Government of Canada, including in the Canadian Armed Forces?
That would be start date of December 17th, 1987.
Have you been employed by any other departments other than as a regular reserve member of the Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defence?
So the short answer is no, but I'm assuming that you're talking about my consulting work.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
You mentioned the date of September 19th, 2023. That was the date that you said what happened?
That was the date that I started as a public service employee.
And did anything else happen on that date that's noteworthy for the work of this committee?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
So we have in the documents that the committee has received, it says that that the department signed a contract with you on that very same date. So I find that interesting that on September 19th of 2023, you were both awarded a contract and awarded a job in the public service. Does Dalian have contracts that are current with the Government of Canada?
Not currently, no, because they were all terminated.
So the number is zero.
Number is zero.
Are you able to, is Dalian able to fully do business with the Government of Canada or bid on work?
No, we are not. We have been suspended from all security clearances, obviously pending this discussion and other discussions ongoing, and all of our contracts have been terminated. So by virtue of that, there is no ability to execute. Yeah.
How many subcontractors do you have?
That is a really good question. From a professional services standpoint, I would actually have to get back to you on that. From a hardware and software perspective, we have 4 or 5 that we use. Yep.
Sir, if you're going to get back to us with the number, can you also provide the committee with the names of those subcontractors?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
If you'd note that for us, please, Chair.
Noted.
Was GC Strategies ever a subcontractor of Dalian?
Again, I spend, a large portion of my time, or I spent a large portion of my time with the Defense Department. whether it was my 168 days as a public servant or whether it was, my consulting time at the department. So, to answer your question, the obvious answer is yes, but the aspect of them, working with us, I'd have to get more detail for you. Yep.
So you can provide us with the when and on which contracts?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we know, of course, that they were, and I appreciate you indicating even a tertiary awareness of it. But they were caught not following security requirements for government contracts. For all of your contracts with the government, knowing that GC Strategies did not meet security requirements, are you able to guarantee the security of all of the contracted work done that you have done with the Government of Canada?
Again, the short answer would be yes, because we are, ISO certified in our processes. But a large part of this happens to be as a prime contractor with the federal government, whether it's, an Aboriginal set-aside contract or not, because we've had both in the past. But I would say that, in retrospect to that, if they have some kind of misgivings on their security clearances, that would be tracked through, and we should have awareness of that at our own security shop. So I've never been told of any issues with the security clearance side of things with GC. And again, I've just been read into this file over the last number of months, and it hasn't come up as an issue.
So are you aware of the reports that I'm referring to, that GC Strategies did not follow the security requirements for contracts with the Government of Canada? Is that something that you've been aware of prior to my speaking of it with you just now?
No, it isn't. You'd have to give me more details on the actual security requirements that were actually, not followed, because I'm not aware of any that they didn't.
Have you or your partner at Dalian ever provided any hospitality to any Government of Canada employees?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Have you or your partner at Dalian ever met with government employees outside of government offices?
I know I have not, and I can say that this is not something that is even remotely looked at from, an internal perspective, but as far as I'm aware, no.
Did you ever meet with Christian Firth of GC Strategies?
I have not met Christian once. No.
Have you ever spoken to him?
No.
Have you ever spoken to his partner?
No.
Has your partner ever spoken to Mr. Firth or his partner?
I would assume yes to that question.
Okay.
Because obviously there was a subcontract that was put together for CBSA for this effort. So I would imagine that there would have been dialogue that would have had to have happened. Yeah.
Is Dalian registered anywhere outside of Canada?
No.
Okay, my last question is, you stated previously that you are constantly audited to ensure that you're eligible for the Indigenous set-aside when winning bids as a joint venture with Caradix. Who is conducting these audits, and when was the last audit done?
Sure. So the audits are done by ISC, which is Indigenous Services Canada, and the last one that was done in February 2024, just a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Mr. Yeo. I understand from earlier testimony you became a public servant with DND on September the 19th of 2023, and you last testified before a committee on October 31st, 2023, approximately a month and a half after you secured full-time employment as a public servant. So the question I put to you is, and I've read the transcript of your previous testimony, sir, at no point in time, despite being asked several questions about the nature of your employment, you focused squarely on your directorship and your shares within Dalian, and you said absolutely nothing about the fact that you were a public servant. So it begs the question, why would you withhold that information from Canadians?
Yep. Appreciate the question. So this needs to be analyzed a little bit more, and it was September 19th that I joined the public service. It was 42 days later that the meeting, came to us, and we were invited as Dalian. I was invited to come to you and speak at OGO as Dalian. The understanding is that Dalian holds a top secret facility clearance. And those that know what a top secret facility clearance is knows. And I hold a higher, and did hold a higher than top secret security clearance for Dalian. As well, in my short time of 42 days with the department, I also have a top secret clearance there and a secret clearance. So, by nature of that aspect, and the fact that this had zero to do with D&D, it had zero to do with what I do during the day as a high assurance specialist for the department. It has zero to do with my employment there, as well as the fact that...
Okay, sir, I'm going to stop you there because my time, sir, I'm going to stop you there. My time is limited. I don't accept your response, and I think most Canadians don't accept that response. After a month and a half, you were divesting your interests in Dalian. You had resigned as a director. You put all of your interest in a blind trust, and you were working on a full-time basis with DND, correct? You had no interest in Dalian, yet you gave the impression that you were still an active participant in this two-person company. So, sir, with respect, I completely disagree with your word salad of an explanation because it just doesn't add up. Now, I'm going to move on to a monetary aspect. You confirmed to my NDP colleague that you received $91 million in federal contracts since Justin Trudeau essentially took over government in 2015. What is your commission rate of that $91 million?
So as a business from Dalian's perspective, and these were TBIP's professional services contracts.
Sir, just the commission rate, please.
Sure, but I need to preface that to make sure that...
No, you don't. I'm asking for a number, sir, or a range. Yeah. What is your commission?
Most of the time, it ranges between 12 and 20%, and in this case, for the ArriveCan aspect, okay, that 91 million wasn't ArriveCan, by the way, but for the ArriveCan aspect, it was 18.2 from what my staff told me.
18.2% for ArriveCan, and you said you disagree with the AG's report that you only received 4.9 million.
1.6 million a year, yes.
Okay, so your 18.2% of 4.9, I can't do the quick math. Was that shared between you and your partner?
Yeah, no, so you have to understand that's
profit,
right?
Was it shared between you and your partner? Is it a 50-50 share operation with your other partner?
It's a gross profit, and when it gets to be a gross profit, you have to factor in expenses, employees, wages, commission.
I understand that, sir. Were you sharing? Were you sharing in the profits 50-50?
No, not 50-50. I'm a majority shareholder in Dalian.
Okay, so what was your share of the $4.9 million?
Well, it's not $4.9 million though. It's revenue. That's $4.9 million in revenue.
Okay, let's not play games. What did you take home? What was your commission for ArriveCan? Give me a number, please.
There is no number because
why not?
Because when you own a business and you have multiple,
you have to declare this as income, sir. So why would you not have this number? You're going to provide this committee, sir. You're going to provide this committee within 7 days your actual remuneration or bonuses on the ArriveCan app. Okay, within 7 days.
If we get asked to do that, sir, we will absolutely provide it. It's not an issue.
And then over and above that 4.9 million, I want to know.
Mr. Brush, you're out of time, but you've asked for some documents. I just want to ensure that Mr. Yeo, is that you received a request from a member to provide some financial documents. Is that something you're prepared to do? Is that something you can do within a reasonable amount of time? I say that because often witnesses will agree to provide information that is requested by the committee. I think you said if you're asked by the committee, you would do so. We can formally do that, but we tried to avoid that. Is that the information Mr. Brock asked you to provide? Is that something you could do?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm willing to support the committee on anything and everything that you guys need to be able to get to where you need to go.
Mr. Yeo, could I also ask that when you send in the documents for that you also include your commission on a contract between D&D and Dalian in 2013?
D&D and Dalian in 2013.
Okay.
Could I ask for a few more details about that? That's somewhat vague. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure which contract you're talking about back then, 10 years ago.
TRN Technologies.
TRM Technologies. Okay. Oh, you must be talking about my consulting.
Yes.
Is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay.
Just let me, I'll just pause the clock. Is that clear, Mr. Yeo?
Well, I think it's clear. I think she's asking for my consulting contract from TRM back in 2013. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That is it.
When you became a full-time employee, actually, you know what? Let's go back and look at it step by step through the hiring process and the ethics and conflict forms that you signed. Can you tell us what you signed?
So through the public service, there's a natural progress, and that was followed to the letter as far as the department is concerned. I did receive a letter of offer on the 19th. Sorry, I received the letter of offer on the 5th of September, and then we went back and forth a little bit, and I signed it on shortly after that with a start date of the 19th of September. And so within that offer is obviously the level that I went in at, which was an IT3, which everybody can look at and see what that level is. And also, obviously a bunch of background information on the whole aspect of DOADs and codes of ethic and the rest of it. So yes.
So you did sign a conflict of interest?
I didn't sign a conflict. I signed the offer, but within the offer, they describe multiple paragraphs, and one of them has to do with conflict. Yeah. Okay.
So Dalian signed a contract with D&D after you became an employee again in the fall of 2021. This is obviously a conflict of interest. Why did you not feel you were in conflict?
Sure. So at that time, I had my hands off the wheel of Dalian even before the 19th of September. And so that's why I provided, my signature to the staff. So if there was something going on that I would be, not even aware of it. So, and in all honesty, I was not even aware that this smaller contract had even come through. Until I started getting read into this file for our meetings.
You said that there were a lot of paragraphs in your contract dealing with conflict of interest. Can you just explain a little bit more about that?
So not like there wasn't multiple paragraphs dealing with conflict. It was multiple paragraphs just describing, our relationship or my relationship with D&D as it relates to the PIPSI union, as it relates to, healthcare, as it relates to a bunch of different things that you would normally have on an offer. But there was one paragraph in there for sure on conflict. Yeah.
Okay. Are you satisfied with your work on ArriveCan? Do you feel that Canadians got good value for money there?
Oh, that's a great question. As a certified, high-tech, consultant, not only a consultant, but, a security specialist certified in many different areas from IT. From an IT perspective, purely, I believe that the aspect of putting all of that together, getting the coding done, getting it on an AWS landing spot, getting it onto, all of the cybersecurity, all of the other healthcare PII information that needed to be adjudicated and coded into the application. Is it fair value? I would have probably booked it in at about 25 to 30 million with probably a 10 or 15% contingency, which is around the number that it would come in at around 40 or 45 million.
Have you ever belonged to a political party?
Yes.
Which one?
I have two, actually. I've been basically a PC supporter for a long, long time. But during the election period of 2021, I did move over to the PPC party and then moved back to the PC party after that.
Oh.
Very good. That is your time, Ms. Yip.
Oh, just when it was getting...
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Yeo, it's good to see you again. You testified before Parliament on October the 31st of last year. I did at the time ask you, what would you say you do here? And this was one answer you gave in the course of that round. You said, I am an executive on the board of directors for Dalian, and I maintain all of the governance as it relates to the PSAB. Mr. Yeo, was that the truth as of October 31st of 2023?
So, Mr. Chair, just a correction, it's Mr. Yeo, okay, not Yeo.
How about just an answer?
But then I will answer you for sure. But, you know, it ends up that we were in that time frame of dealing with lawyers, and I had been, you know, directing at a director level.
Sir. October the 31st, you were before this committee.
Yeah.
You answered my question in a particular way. Was what you said to the committee then assembled on October the 31st, was it the truth?
So at that time, there was no divestiture because we were working on it. And
were you, quote, were you, quote, an executive on the board of directors for Dalian? Were you the one who, quote, maintained all of the governance on October the 31st? Was that true? Yes or no?
Sure. Yes.
It was true.
Well, that's the answer you're looking for, so I'm going to give it to you.
No, sir. I'm looking for the true answer.
So the true answer is,
just as I was on October the 31st.
We were in flux during that time period in order to, obviously, we had 60 days to get everything done, and we did that with Dalian and got our non-disclosure in and our no access.
Okay, sir, you're not in flux. You either were on the board of directors or you weren't on the board of directors, right? You know, a person is either pregnant or not. They're either on the board of directors or they're not on the board of directors. They're not half pregnant and they're not half on the board of directors. You have said that shamefully the media have claimed that you were on the board of directors and a government employee at the same time without asking you. Well, maybe they didn't need to ask you because they foolishly assumed that what you told Parliament on October the 31st was true. Now, sir, your LinkedIn account says that you were a business owner at Dalian Enterprises from 2001 until present, and you were employed by the Department of National Defense continuously from 1987 until present. So, again, to your truthfulness or not, was your LinkedIn account accurate in description of those timelines?
Well, if you look at LinkedIn, it is a non-authoritative source. First of all, it's LinkedIn. It's a web page. All right. Second of all,
why would we believe what's on the internet, sir? It's your own LinkedIn profile, sir. Why would we expect that you would put accurate information on your own LinkedIn page? Outrageous.
All right,
Chair, I'm okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to answer that question if I could.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Januous. It is his round of questioning. I'll just ask you to. We can all hear you quite clearly, so if you could just keep that in mind, Mr. Januous.
Thank you, Chair. I am getting a little bit excited here because Mr. Yeo, you have Mr. Yeo, whatever your name is, sir.
All right. Hold on, Mr. Januous. I would ask. Names are important.
Okay.
We all make mistakes, but if you could conduct yourselves in a way that shows our witness respect,
okay, it's Janice, by the way, but
that's a good point. Yes, and it's William's son. I realize.
If we're insisting,
you have a minute and a half left, Mr. Januous.
Okay. Sir, you have on your LinkedIn profile a claim that you were simultaneously working for the government and leading Dalian. You told this committee on October the 31st, pardon me, not this committee, but you told that committee on October 31st that you were you were on the board of directors for Dalian. You were at the time employed by the government. And you have subsequently said, oh, no, There was some flux going on. But you clearly were in a conflict of interest, weren't you, sir? You were clearly doing both at the same time. And now you're trying to weasel your way out of it after the fact, but you were clearly in a conflict of interest, were you not?
So, okay, so I need to answer the LinkedIn side of it first. First of all, it's a non-authoritative source, and it's on the internet.
It's
and
your profile.
It did say 1987.
Did you write it?
It did not describe all of my service that I have done. I have done 14 years in the Reg Force, 10 years in the Reserves, 20 years as a contractor. I've had 36 years in the department.
Did you subcontract the writing of your LinkedIn profile, sir?
I probably could have or should have.
GC?
Your time for
So
the
I
next
needed to
question.
answer your question. You asked me a question, and I'm trying to answer it, okay? The department has deemed...
Were you not in a
understand,
conflict
we're
of
not-
interest
no.
being on the board of directors of Dalian at the same time as you were an employee of a department that was giving contracts to a company that you, according to your testimony before Parliament, were on the board of directors of?
Thank you, Mr.
My
Jenners. That is your
understanding is
time.
that
I will allow
D&D
for an answer, please. Yes, I will allow you to answer, Mr.
thank you.
Jenners. Your time is expired. You have the floor,
Thanks,
sir.
Mr. Chair. Yeah. My understanding is that D&D has made a statement that there was no conflict of interest. Period.
Thank you. Turning now to Ms.
Well, that puts it to rest then, doesn't it?
I want to clarify a few things. Can you confirm that you resigned from the public service on March 5th, 2024? Is that correct?
March the 5th, 2024. That is correct, yep.
Now you said that D&D had made a statement that there was no conflict of interest. Was that made directly to you, or who made the...
No, it was out in the media outlets, yeah.
Did you ever receive a report from D&D related to the conflict of interest?
No. It was an alleged conflict that somebody put up, I guess. Then, and what I've heard in the papers, and I know in my own heart, there was no conflict.
So you never received a report on March 3rd of a conflict of interest report from the Department of National Defense?
I did not, no.
Okay. We will follow up on that another time. You mentioned that you had been a consultant for a number of years with the Department of National Defense. I think often we see examples of consultants who work within the department almost parallel to, or often in conjunction and integrated with public servants. Did you ever personally have such a relationship at D&D in which you worked at D&D HQ or worked closely with full-time indeterminate public servants during your time as a consultant?
Well, the way the consultant aspect works for most of the departments is that absolutely you are the subject matter expert layer within the directorate, and you have absolutely public servants that manage you on a day-to-day basis. So the interactions there, yeah, absolutely.
So very similar to an employment situation, although you would be on a contract rather than an employee of His Majesty's Public Service. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd go with the employment side of it. You're there as a contractor, right? So through TBIPs, through SBIPs, through PS Online, or one of those other staff augmentation contracts. And then there's a pretty clear line. You have zero ability to sign off or do anything as a consultant, right? So.
And during that period, were you physically working at D&D HQ?
Not at HQ, no. No, I worked for ADM MAT, which is actually under DGLEPM, under the Army side of it.
But you did work at a government office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was a part of the whole directorate for 22 years, yeah.
Okay, but at a government office, okay. When was the first time you cashed a check or e-transfer for your ArriveCan app work? When was the first time you received payment? You mentioned $4.9 million over 3 years. What was the date of the first payment receipt?
Are you talking about a commission or something like that?
No, the first payment from the government for your work on ArriveCan.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure if that's right. I'd have to check with our CFO shop. I don't have that detail on me. Yeah.
Okay, I'd appreciate getting that information on the first date that you received, as well as the last date. Are you able to tell us approximately when that last payment came through?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our CFO shop would have all of that detail, and we would provide that to you on a timely basis for sure.
I would appreciate
Thank you.
that. Thank you, Chair.
I was thanking the witness. I just acknowledging his agreement. So you've got 90 seconds to go. Sorry, Mr. Nader.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. You'd mentioned. you had mentioned in your opening statements how you were either putting your interests in Dalian into a blind trust, or you had already put them into a blind trust when you joined the public service. Can you clarify what you meant by a blind trust?
Oh, sure. So when you do a divestiture, there's lawyers involved, and you have to divest your shares. You have to put them in to a trustee, and there's a lot of documentation back and forth in order to facilitate that. And we did start that right away. My meetings with my lawyers and things like that happened November all the way through into January, and we put the non-disclosure, non-access in with Dalian at the same time, and eventually we did put in all of our documents with D&D. But in hindsight, I'll be honest with you, in hindsight, knowing what I know now and the whole situation that we've run up against here, there's a direct response from me that I should have put all of that in, even previous to signing the offer, and I should have done all of that prior to even looking at the offer from the government. So that one's on me, but at the end of the day, all of the information did get to where it needed to go.
I'm going to push you a little bit on this. Sure. When we hear the term a blind trust, I mean, it's tough to see how a blind trust would work when you were the founder and majority shareholder of a corporation named Dalian, which, you can't all of a sudden forget you own, whether it's visible in a blind trust or not, but you also use the term divesting your interests in it. So I'm not entirely clear which one you were trying to do. Were you trying to put your corporation to blind trust, which again I'm not sure how arm's length that could be, or were you divesting yourself of your corporation at that time? We know now you're back in full swing with the company, but what was actually your intent at the time? Was it to have it in an arm's length, untouchable entity of a blind trust, or were you divesting? Were you selling off your shares? Were you divesting yourself of your corporation at the time? It's not clear what you were doing while you were active as a member of the Public Service of Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Nader. That is your time. I will certainly allow for a reply. Yes, Mr. Yeo.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, absolutely. It was not a divestiture, but a blind trust, and I did, acquire a trustee that I trusted to hold my shares, and that's the course of action that we took. So if I mentioned divestiture, that's not the case.
Do you have any companies or interests in companies outside of Canada?
No, sir.
No offshore holdings?
No.
Are any of your former colleagues at D&D double dipping?
I'm not sure I don't know if I know what that means, but I am not aware of any double dipping going on.
It's what you do. It's working for the federal government as a public servant, but also as a contractor concurrently.
Well, I would assume that there are lots of people in the public service that have companies outside of the public service, yes.
That do work for the government of Canada. You think that that's quite common?
I think it's fairly common, yes.
And what do you base that on? Just your personal experience or conversations with other public servants?
I would say that it's just my own perception. I've been around the department forever, and everybody has their day-to-day work, and maybe they have a little side gig at night doing something else.
For the same department that they work for?
Oh, probably not. No, if you're talking about that, yeah, no.
You talked about how you took this job to drive projects. What did you say your position was within the public service?
So I am a tactical security specialist that's certified in high assurance capabilities that go into the Canadian Army at the very pointy end of the stick in combat vehicles, on soldiers. I'm a soldier myself.
Not the technology, sir. I'm asking about what level you were at in the public service.
Oh, sorry, an IT3.
Okay, so were you leading change as an IT3? Is that pretty common for IT3s to be leading departmental and organizational change?
Well, I certainly wouldn't put it up that high. As a team lead, that is the correct statement, is a team lead as an IT3, and you're in charge of a number of projects, and in this case, from my side, it was a high assurance security project.
So you've said that the Auditor General's figure that she attributed to your companies is incorrect. Is that's fair?
This is what I've been read into, and my staff tells me, yeah.
What you've been read? Did you read the Auditor General's report?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All of it.
So
and I've got lots of comments.
well, that's great. So by read into, you mean you read it?
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
So you read it and determined that the Auditor General, who is by definition a general with an army of auditors, that should be easy for you to understand based on your experience, that the whole army of auditors was wrong and this one-man army was right. But you've offered a series of assertions in your committee appearances that aren't true. And those have been highlighted by members of other parties and my colleagues. Even just today, you said that you're a member of the Conservative Party, and that's not true. You haven't been a member of the Conservative Party since 2021, and so that's
okay.
That's okay. That's fine.
Okay. Order.
That's fine.
Order.
That's
order.
fine.
Order.
We know how
just
to.
1 second.
We know how to.
Just 1 second. I'm going to stop the clock. That is a prop, and it's not allowed. Second, that is a donor card, and it's not a membership card. We all get them to try to get money. Mr. Barrett, you have a minute and a half.
Okay. So it's a donor card. So
okay.
what you're offering is again not an honest representation of what you're doing. And I know you thought it was going to be a great gotcha moment, but it demonstrated that you're not being truthful, sir. And so when it comes down to you not knowing the difference between being a member of a party and whether or not you've made a donation to a party, should we really trust your assessment on whether or not the Auditor General of Canada is wrong in the amount of business that you have done with the Government of Canada? I'm inclined to trust the Auditor General, just like I know that I can trust membership services, that they knew that whatever it was that you were going to hold up wasn't going to be what you said it was. So, while your misrepresentations vary, that's just another great example that we can't trust what you've said to be true, and it gives rise to more questions than it does answers. I'll cede my time back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Turning now to Mr. Jauhari, you have the, thank you for joining us today, Mr. Jauhari. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be here once again. And Mr. Yeo, I'd like to go back to the ArriveCan. Can you kindly tell me how did the contract for ArriveCan came to Dalian?
My understanding, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the question, my understanding is that we never had an ArriveCan contract, but this was all through staff augmentation contracts that were competitively awarded to Dalian on behalf of CBSA. So okay. My understanding is that it was staff aug contracts, yeah.
Okay, so the staff augmentation contract that was awarded to Dalian on CBSA, how did that come about?
So again, I'm buried 2 gates deep at D&D, and I don't have the exact aspects of how that actually transpired, but I could ask our staff. And
yeah, I would appreciate it if you could provide that to the committee. Sure. Sir, you've indicated that the amount of the contract was $4.9 million. The amount of staff augmentation was $4.9 million over 2 years for 20 employees at 100 hours, and you call that a part-time, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if my math holds, and at 1.6 divided by 20 divided by 100, you are charging about $815 an hour, whereas GC's strategy for ArriveCan was charging in the 1,200 plus. Can you explain why? Because if you're
past where I've given,
you didn't qualify that to committee. I know Mr. Barrett.
Tell me of the projects that you have
number out there. So from a training people that
claim of Indigenous status in
the PSAB at the time and being able to and also
wanted to appreciate that, Mr. Howard, and good. We'll look for that response as well, Mr. Yeo. Beginning now our fourth and last round, Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to pursue this line of misrepresentations, Mr. Yeo. I know Mr. Barrett asked you some questions and other members have asked you questions, which, in my opinion, really challenge your credibility. Now, both you and the owner of Corodex, Mr. Wood, testified on October 31st, 2023, and both of you were quite emphatic that you are regularly, both businesses are regularly audited by Indigenous Services Canada with respect to the procurement strategy for Indigenous businesses, and you both have been receiving clean audits. But that was a misrepresentation. It was a lie, because Indigenous Services Canada said all they do with respect to the set-asides that both your companies operate under from time to time is they do pre-audits. They don't do post-audits. Do you agree with that assessment from Indigenous Services Canada?
I would absolutely agree with that. Yes,
right.
For sure.
But you didn't qualify that to the membership. You didn't qualify that to committee.
Well, it's your policy. I mean, like I understand that we go through audits, but I think that's a normal course of action for ISC in its entirety.
Well, I think it's a pretty big deal, sir, when you lead the committee to believe that you're running a clean business, that your Indigenous set-asides are legitimate. They're not operating under a phantom scheme. I know you've been heavily criticized by a number of Indigenous organizations that you're running this. In fact, Bottler even made the same allegation. So these are real concerns. And I think you have to be honest with committee members, sir, because although you haven't been sworn to tell the truth, there is a presumption that you will tell the truth at committee. And there are consequences when people do not tell the truth at committee. So we're going to find out ultimately by the end of this summer through Indigenous Services Canada, who's going to audit everything that you have done, as well as Corodex, hopefully for the last 8 years, if not longer, with respect to all the Indigenous set-asides. Because I think Canadians deserve to know whether or not Indigenous Canadians have benefited from this particular government operation. And if they haven't, then, sir, you'll have some questions to answer. So I put that out to you, sir. Now, the other aspect that concerns me is your relationship with the GC Strategies. Is it accurate, sir, that the one and only time that you worked with GC Strategies was on the Bottler task authorization?
That I would have to ask our staff. I'm not exactly sure if there was anything else in relation to working with GC Strategies. So okay. I'd have to ask our staff about that.
Well, let's talk about Bottler for a moment, please. You do know that Christian Firth testified from GC Strategies that not on one occasion, but upwards to 5 occasions, he deliberately and intentionally doctored work experience for both of the Bottler partners. And he claimed it was a mistake. But given my former background as a Crown attorney, all accused persons, all criminals claim they made mistakes. What in fact Mr. Firth did was commit forgery. And it was a fraud on the government. And what concerns me, sir, is that the Globe recently reported that both you, your company Dalian and Corodex, received those doctored resumes, those fraudulent, forged resumes, and you in fact forwarded that on to the government. That was recent news to me and perhaps this committee, because we were all led to believe that it was Christian Firth at GC who delivered that directly to the government. So it really begs the question, sir, if you've only had a limited amount of time with GC Strategies, why would you accept their material at face value? Because now you're implicated as a joint venture, as a party to the offense of fraud and forgery. It's no wonder that the RCMP are currently investigating your company and that of Corodex, and notwithstanding that you haven't been contacted, certainly does not make yourself in the clear. So you talked about quality management systems in place. Why didn't the quality management system catch these fraudulent resumes?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a good question. So, first and foremost, we're as dismayed as the rest of the committee on the findings from GC Strategies. We were definitely not aware of what was going on, below our subcontractor. The contract between us and GC Strategies is exactly that. We have no reference to Bottler in this case, and what information is being provided, by GC Strategies to us. There are aspects that, and I will be honest with you, there's aspects of third-party verification on employment and that sort of thing, but it's not an industry standard. It's not an industry standard that everybody does in the entire, professional services market. So, what we've learned from this is that even though we do our due diligence on security clearances and putting the CVs together and the categories and the grids and staffing that up to CBSA, what we have learned is that we likely need to put a third-party, verification of employment in place that would allow us to smoke this kind of stuff out. And we just weren't aware of it.
Thank you.
And so I want you to know how serious this issue is and to understand that providing any assistance from your company to the forgery of documents is illegal. Do you understand that?
Absolutely, and that's why we're just as dismayed as everybody else as to why and how we could have got this information wrong.
Whose letterhead were these resumes on?
So I would expect that our relationship as the prime to CBSA, we would have staffed up the package for the task authorization to them as part of the requirements package. So it would have gone on Dalian letterhead. But I'm not sure exactly what the interaction or documents or letterhead was.
So you're misrepresenting facts, Mr. Yeo. See, that's completely disingenuous to then say your company never had any access to a bottler. Your only relationship was with GC Strategies, and then you just now confirm that the resumes that were forged were in your company's letterhead. Is that true?
So again,
can you repeat that? No, Mr. Yeo, is what you just said true? Are the forged resumes on your company letterhead?
I can give you the process. I have never seen any.
Mr. Yeo, can you please answer yes or no to the fact you just submitted?
Well, I tell you this. I understand what the process would be because I understand task authorizations, but I have not seen any of the paperwork.
You just admitted that you've not seen the paperwork, but you just said you know that the letterhead is on Dalian, or the forged documents are on Dalian letterhead.
I can assume that obviously us as the prime and us giving CBSA this documentation as a part of the task authorization, likely it would go on Dalian letterhead.
Mr. Yeo, this has been extremely disappointing to see this level of misrepresentation.
Your time, Mr. Desjardins. Turning now to Mr. Genuous, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Yeo, your company has 2 people. Is your partner Indigenous?
He is.
He is, okay. You got $7.9 million on ArriveCan alone, even though, as you've testified, you didn't do any actual work on the app. How many Indigenous Canadians, besides you two, benefited from that big fat check that the government wrote to Dalian for ArriveCan?
So our interpretation is that it's 4.9 million, but the aspect
so your interpretation is that you know better than the Auditor General?
I'm just telling you the facts that from our side. And we actually went out to the...
I think that's absurd, sir, but I want to actually focus on the Indigenous procurement component of it. Sure. How many Indigenous people besides you and your partner...
I've stopped the clock, Mr. Jonathan. I will just remind everyone, because this has come up time and time again, the auditor's terms do not allow her to go into companies like the one before us today, Dalian. So that you sent her documents from her perspective could have been irrelevant. You'll all recall that the auditor noted she came up with these numbers based on what the government of Canada provided her. So just that's just a point of clarification for the committee. It doesn't change any of your questions, Mr. Janice. I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that this is an ongoing debate about the scope of ArriveCan, and I think it is an important one. So we don't know what the answer is. That's why these committee meetings are happening. Ms. Janice, you have the floor for 4.5 minutes.
Mr. Yeo, besides the 2 people at your company, how many Indigenous people benefited from the $7.9 million that the Government of Canada gave you for the work you did on ArriveCan?
So in reference to the 7.9 million, which is actually 4.9, our actual representation of profit in that helps not only pay our staff, but also helps with our staff augmentation with Karatics as well.
How many Indigenous people? So you're not answering my question. You're talking about your staff, but there's two of you. So okay, there are two Indigenous people who benefited, you and your partner. But how many other Indigenous people benefited from this particular outlay from the Government of Canada?
Well, I mean, we do work with the Algonquin College on staffing bursaries and things like that. I do have outreach back to my own, reserve in Alderville. But as far as, benefiting...
What does that even mean, though? Like you have reached back, so when you make a lot of money, I don't know... how do Indigenous Canadians benefit from you getting this deal?
Sure. The PSAP process and the PSAP policy, that's a government policy that we favor because it's a great policy. It's not
I'm sure you think it's a great policy. Sorry,
it's not made to help Indigenous communities across the country. It's made to help the entrepreneur that's trying to get government contracts to grow his business. So, in that context, it's not made for helping out Indigenous communities across the country.
Okay, so you just said that the government's Indigenous procurement policy, in your view, is not made to benefit Indigenous communities across the country. It's made to benefit the particular entrepreneur.
It's made to help the entrepreneur get access to government contracting that would allow them to grow the company in whatever fashion they want.
So your position is the policy made you money, therefore it's achieving its objective, regardless of the impact on Indigenous communities across the country.
So that could be your interpretation, but it's not the reality. The reality is...
I was just repeating what you just said, though.
Well, no, you weren't repeating what I just said. But in the context of the PSIB, it's spread out across the entire country, and there's lots of people that are actually working within the framework of that.
No, but sir, that actually isn't what you said before. But to broaden this out, so from what I understand, you've gotten your company has received hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts from the Trudeau government since 2015. That is under the framework of a policy that I thought was intended to actually elevate the conditions that Indigenous peoples in this country are living in. And you're saying, well, no, it's good enough that process made me money. That would seem to go against what Canadians would expect of the policy, surely.
My understanding of the value that you put out was 91 million. I've got it in front of me from 2015 until now. But at the same time, you can look in the PSAB and the PSIB policy and nowhere will it...
Sorry, just because my time's about to run out, Chair, I'd like to move a motion that the committee write to INAN to recommend that they investigate abuses in the Indigenous procurement system. I think the need for this motion is self-evident from the testimony that we've received.
Any chance you sent that motion to the clerk?
I did send it in advance. It's that the committee write to INAN to recommend that they investigate abuses in the Indigenous procurement system.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to ask you just to kind of hold firm for a little while longer, because we might come back to you for some questions for just one last member.
Shall the motion, as moved by Mr. Jennis, carry? Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Chen?
Yes.
Mr. Jawari?
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan?
Yes.
Ms. Yip?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Jennis?
Yes.
Mr. Vierson?
Yes.
Madame Saint-Claude de Gagny? Oui. Mr. Desjardins?
Yes.
10 yeas.
Thank you very much. That concludes that bit of business.
Mr. Yeo, you said repeatedly that D&D said there was no conflict, and you keep talking about this document. Can you provide a copy to the committee?
So I did see in the papers that D&D did make a statement indicating that there was no conflict. And it's a protected B document, but I have no issues with supplying you with anything.
Okay. Do you think there was anything wrong with the Auditor General's report on ArriveCan?
So it's a good report, but they have trouble putting this together because of the exact nature of how contracting works with TBIPs and SBIPs and professional services. They're all staff augmentation contracts. There potentially could be direct contracts for ArriveCan only. So they have a challenge against them to try and decipher all of this data. And so, even though we instituted an email back to the Auditor General on the 30th of January indicating this, 4.9 versus 7.9 that was attributed to ArriveCan, they themselves even have attributed to, on page 5, 1.21, they've indicated that CBSA has expressed concerns that 12.2 million of the 59 million estimate could be unrelated to ArriveCan. So, it's a challenging report, and it's a challenging effort to put it together.
Okay. Your time in Afghanistan, how long were you there?
I was there for 4 months.
And what was your role there?
I was delivering a high assurance security capability to Kandahar and to all of the forward operating bases out in Afghanistan.
Can you just tell me what that means?
Basically, our effort was to ensure that all of the pieces and parts were in place, so all of our coalition members knew exactly where our friendly forces were, and a couple of other capabilities.
Thank you, and over to you, Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you very much. So just a few more questions, Mr. Yeo, to clarify who you are and your background and so on. So how long have you been a member of the Conservative Party?
Well, I've been a member for my entire life. I've been always voting, progressive conservative, and at the same time, I believe that my last membership back in after my my very short stint with the PPC party, and I came back to the party, is for 5 years.
Oh, and you did show a card at some point. Can you just show that up for the hold that up to the camera, or perhaps table it to
Miss Shanahan. Hold on,
as
Miss
a document.
That is a prop, as the clerk is reminding me, and not permitted. So
yeah, as a document to table it with this committee, that would be greatly appreciated, because it does seem that there's some confusion between whether it's a membership card
point of
or
order,
donation.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
It's quite evident that Mr. Yeo does not have a Conservative membership card. Therefore, I have no objection to tabling.
Thank you. All right.
Excellent. You see how well we work together, Chair. This is so much appreciated. Can you tell us, as you are a donor, just roughly how much money have you donated to the Conservative Party?
Oh, I'm not sure if I can disclose that, but it's not great numbers, that's for sure.
All right, and just for the sake of parity, have you ever been a member of the Liberal Party of Canada?
I have not.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much.
That's it?
Maybe this is in my future. Who knows?
Liberal insight.
I should ask maybe one last question. So the People's Party of Canada, you said you're no longer a member. So can you just give us the duration there of how long you were a member of that party?
Is there overlap here too, or
maybe 5 months from start to finish? Because originally I was actually in line to be the PC Party candidate for Ottawa West Nepean. So I was actually in line to be with the PC Party, which I should have stayed with them. But I moved over to the PPC Party after Mr. O'Toole's kind of policies came out.
Well, yeah. So I think that concludes my questions, Chair.